The National Desk, America's News, now.
It's the right to protest, but not the right to cause chaos.
A rise in violence seen on college campuses as demonstrators call on their universities to pick a side in the Gaza war, where we're seeing the biggest crackdown and where protesters have stood down after seeing their demands met. Another possible school shooting stopped, the tip that saved a community from potential tragedy. And new warnings emerge about the dangers that exist in the EV batteries, what the government is doing to keep the risks at a minimum. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David. Tonight, more crackdowns on pro-Palestinian anti-war protests seen on U.S. campuses coast to coast. At UCLA in Los Angeles, clashes and mass arrests after police ordered protesters to disperse early this morning. And you can see here police tearing down makeshift barricades at a demonstration that had drawn hundreds of protesters and just the night before was attacked by a group of pro-Israeli counter-protesters. 200 of the demonstrators out this morning, arrested, booked, and released today, though an AP analysis showing 2,000 people have been arrested across universities since April 18th. And take a look at this. This is the moment police entered Portland State University in Oregon. Law enforcement clearing out a protest that found its way into the school's library. And you can see here protesters running out of the library just as soon as police entered. They had begun occupying the library on Monday. Some left yesterday following university requests, while others remained. Damage and vandalism was visible after arrests were made. One witness criticizing law enforcement's handling of the protesters.
I think it's kind of shameful, to be honest. I just witnessed them about 10 minutes ago arrest a protester who was trying to comply with their demands and leave before arrests were happening, and they arrested him anyways, and I think that's kind of ridiculous.
That campus has been closed for 2 days. President Joe Biden today addressing the protests from the White House, saying students have a right to dissent, but not a right to cause chaos.
The American people are heard. In fact, peaceful protest is in the best tradition of how Americans respond to consequential issues. But neither are we a lawless country. We are a civil society, and order must prevail.
However, at both Rutgers and the University of Minnesota, where encampments were set up for several days, things remained rather peaceful. Protesters there voluntarily took down their tents this afternoon after each respective school agreed to address student demands to review its financial ties with Israel in hopes of cutting investments in companies supporting the country's military campaign in Gaza. And right now, a live look at downtown Fort Worth, Texas, where tragedy was averted today when 2 students were arrested in connection to a possible planned school shooting. A parent of a Wilson Middle School student alerted the school district yesterday of an online document that is said to include a watch list of 25 students and staff members who would be targets in a potential attack. The minors arrested could be charged with felonies. Meanwhile, classes were canceled today at Mount Orab Middle School right outside of Madison, Wisconsin. The community stunned tonight, processing a possible would-be attacker on the school. Police are not revealing the identity of the minor who brought a rifle to the facility but was shot and killed by police yesterday before he or she could open fire. The officers involved are now on administrative leave as the investigation unfolds. In Pennsylvania, Heather Presti, a former nursing home nurse, pleaded guilty today to mistreating 22 patients, 17 of whom died. The victims ranged in age from 43 to 104. Presti was accused of purposely overdosing her patients with insulin at different facilities over a 3-year period. Presti has now been sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Crews have found a 5th body in the Francis Scott Key Bridge collapse. A victim has been identified as 49-year-old Miguel Angel Luna Gonzalez. This comes after a salvage team found a missing construction vehicle and reported it to Maryland police. 6 construction workers were on the bridge the day of the collapse. One victim's body is still missing. Maryland is getting an insurance payment of $350 million related to the collapse. That's according to the broker in charge of its policy on the bridge. The money will come from the insurer Chubb and will be made very soon, but it'll still only cover a fraction of the billions of dollars in damages and cleanup costs. Day 10 of former President Donald Trump's New York hush money trial has wrapped up. The jury listened to a recording of Trump and Michael Cohen talking about a deal to pay adult film star Stormy Daniels not to say anything about the affair she said she had with Trump. Prosecutors say hush money payments interfered in the election. Trump's defense team says he didn't break any laws. President Biden privately met with the families of the 4 law enforcement officers who were shot and killed this week in Charlotte, North Carolina. The officers were killed when a wanted man shot at a task force that was trying to arrest him. 4 other officers were hurt and the suspect was killed. Biden has made reducing gun violence a major campaign platform in this year's race. Biden's political headwinds are not letting up. Traditional reliable groups of voters as of now are pulling their support. The National Desk's Christine Frizzell has a look at one of those groups, young people, whose loyalties for now appear to be shifting.
President Biden this week announcing a major change in drug policy. It would reclassify marijuana as a less dangerous drug. An effort many believe to try to appeal to a loyal group of voters, young people, around 60% of whom voted for him in 2020. It's not just new efforts.
This planet's not for profit.
Biden has spent most of his presidency pushing policies to combat climate change and has many times attempted to forgive billions of dollars in student loan debt. Still, kitchen table issues like the economy and inflation are also top of mind for young people.
Biden keeps bragging about this economy that's on paper looking pretty good, but for many young people, they're years away from being able to afford a house.
The changing fate summed up in headlines this week, like Joe Biden's youth vote has collapsed and Biden's young voter problem keeps getting worse. A new CNN poll showing in a Biden versus Trump matchup, Trump is leading 51% to 40% among voters younger than 35. Over the last few months, many young people have cited President Biden's support for Israel as a reason why they won't support him. Their frustration playing out at campus protests nationwide.
I think the biggest concern is going to be young people staying at home or perhaps just skipping that presidential line on their ballot. It doesn't take a lot of voters in some of these swing states.
Some warning it could result in policies they like even less should Trump win in November.
I keep trying to tell the left this every week, like, the more you do crazy, the more you push the people in the middle to the right.
There is one other factor on which many experts agree. Of all the voting blocs, young people are the least likely to be thinking ahead. So we won't likely have an accurate snapshot of their sentiments until just before the election. Amira?
Very good point there. And what about the issue of abortion rights? Could that be a big motivating factor in November?
Absolutely. This is an issue which, for those who see it as important, it really crosses into all age ranges. But take, for example, the abortion rights initiative on the ballot in Ohio. 77% of young voters voted to pass that.
All right, Christine Frizzell, live from Washington, D.C. for us. Thank you, as always. A second Boeing whistleblower has died. Former quality auditor at Boeing supplier Spirit Aerosystems, Joshua Dean, passed away at the age of 45 following a fast-spreading infection. Dean's family says that he was being treated after having trouble breathing 2 weeks ago, and his condition quickly worsened. Dean was represented by the Knowles law firm, which, by the way, also represented Boeing whistleblower John Burnett, who was found dead by an apparent self-inflicted gunshot in his truck last month. I-95 in Norwalk, Connecticut, east of Stamford, will remain closed for days. Early this morning, a fuel tanker burst into flames in a 3-vehicle crash, including another truck and a passenger car. No serious injuries have been reported, but at least 75% of the 8,500 gallons of fuel was either burned or spilled on the highway. Hazmat's crews have been cleaning the area. With a 6-week abortion ban now in effect in Florida, the state just put out emergency rules for treating health conditions that put the lives of mothers and unborn children in danger. The rules list conditions like ectopic pregnancies that would count as exceptions to the law, and they spell out certain record-keeping and reporting requirements. Arizona has officially repealed a Civil War-era ban on almost all abortions in the state. Governor Katie Hobbs signed the legislative repeal of the 1864 law today. This comes after the state Senate approved the bill yesterday. Last month, Arizona's Supreme Court found the state may enforce that 1864 law banning all abortions except for when the life of the mother was at stake. Coming up, what the nation's top intelligence officials say is perhaps the most pernicious threat to the United States. Then over 16,000 pounds of ground beef are being recalled for possible E. coli, where it was sold and what you need to look out for. Plus, more Americans are opting for electric vehicles, but first responders may not be prepared for when they catch fire. We're looking into what's being done. Right now, we are following another line of storms passing over the Central Plains from Louisiana to Missouri and parts of Illinois. This afternoon, residents of Joplin suffered minor damage to some homes from a tornado that also downed some trees in the area. That tornado has since lifted. Those storms are headed towards Peoria and St. Louis, while later tonight, severe weather will pass over northern Texas into Oklahoma City. No tornado watches have been made quite yet. Meanwhile, parts of East Texas are underwater as a storm system continues to dump rain across the region. Mandatory evacuations have been ordered near Houston along the San Jacinto River as watch levees approach the heights that they were when the city was hit by Hurricane Harvey. The area received more than half a foot of rain over the last 24 hours, with some spots reporting 10 to 12 inches. The National Weather Service predicts the rainstorm will continue to push south across the Houston metro area through Friday morning. Top intelligence officials briefed senators today on what they assess to be the biggest threats to the United States. At the top of their list are cyber attacks from foreign adversaries. National correspondent Atrel Nashar has the details, including why officials say the U.S. is so vulnerable.
A forewarning about the nefarious activity of America's adversaries. The Director of National Intelligence and Director of Defense Intelligence describing to the Senate Armed Services Committee what they see as the top 3 worldwide threats. authoritarian powers tightening their bonds, especially China and Russia, tensions in the Middle East and Eastern Europe that could erupt into full-blown regional conflicts, and what they say is one of the most pernicious threats, cyber attacks.
We have seen a massive increase in the number of ransomware attacks globally in the last year, which went up as much as 74% in 2023.
American entities, especially healthcare systems, are currently the biggest targets. The recent United Health hack disrupted payment and claim systems nationwide. But it's the nation's critical infrastructure, water, agriculture, energy, transportation, that the intelligence community fears will be prime targets if the U.S. is drawn into war with what some in Congress call a new axis of evil: Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea.
What we see is both China and Russia effectively trying to pre-position themselves in ways that would allow them to conduct those kinds of attacks.
Russia and China have denied involvement in cyber attacks. Intelligence officials say the first line of defense is private companies locking their digital door, so to speak. In fact, they say in virtually every attack on U.S. infrastructure, hackers took advantage of unnecessary vulnerabilities. And sometimes it's as simple as a weak password. As adversaries tighten their alliances, the stakes of war get higher and higher.
Basically, if we were to have a conflict with one, the chances are we would have a second front.
Officials are convinced that what the U.S. does now to prepare will determine its ability to respond to attacks, cyber or otherwise, in the not-too-distant future. On Capitol Hill, I'm Atra El-Najjar for the National Desk, America's News Now.
Atra, thank you. The years-long case, U.S. versus Google, is almost over and could set a huge precedent for reining in tech giants. Lawyers for the Justice Department and Google started closing arguments today. The government argues Google broke antitrust laws to keep itself as the dominant search engine. Google argues it's just that good, and it didn't have to break any laws to get that top spot. The judge's ruling could break Google up or absolve it entirely. Maternal mortality rates, they fell in the United States for the first time in 4 years. The CDC released a new report today with numbers from 2022 showing about 22 deaths for every 100,000 live births. This number was still higher than the death rate seen in 2019, but drastically lower than 2021's rate. The rate of 49.5 deaths per 100,000 births for Black women remains by far the highest among other racial or ethnic groups. The Biden administration is taking action toward replacing lead pipelines across the country. The EPA announced an additional $3 billion in funding today. It's part of the historic $15 billion bipartisan infrastructure law. The effort will replace around 1.7 million lead pipes to deliver clean drinking water throughout communities. More than 16,000 pounds of ground beef have been recalled because of possible E. coli. This was sold at Walmarts across the country and includes patties and trays of ground chuck and sirloin. No illnesses have been reported quite yet, but symptoms to look out for include severe stomach cramps and diarrhea. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you. We're taking the pulse of America.
A brief hearing with major implications.
Call and check.
The 29-year-old man accused of killing and cannibalizing his victim, appearing dazed during his first court appearance Wednesday morning. Attorney David Westbrook immediately requesting his client be sent for a competency evaluation. A report filled with bizarre and gruesome details. Check arrested Sunday morning at Charleston and 3rd. Police found him kneeling over the body of Kenneth Brown. Check telling officers he'd been awake for 5 days straight because, quote, something is possessing him. He also admitted to getting into a fight with a shapeshifter and then eating the man's eyeballs and ears.
It's called Hacking for Dummies. This is the 5th edition. It doesn't include the nature of the breach that you all developed, but this is some basic stuff that was missed.
Members of the Senate Finance Committee grilling United Healthcare CEO Andrew Whitty.
To all those impacted, let me be very clear. I'm deeply, deeply sorry.
Whitty admits a cyber attack at his company caused disruptions with patients and providers and put personal information in jeopardy. The computer's portal at United Healthcare didn't require a multi-factor authentication. It's a basic security feature that prevents stolen passwords by requiring a second code to be sent to an employee's trusted device, like a phone.
36-year-old Hermanio Joseph found guilty after veering into a school bus back on August 22nd, resulting in the death of 11-year-old Aiden Clark. This video showing the moments the bus was hit by Joseph's SUV, then running off the road before flipping on its side. Today in court, Joseph took the stand, trying to explain what happened, saying the sun was in his eyes.
Is that why you put your visor down? Is the sun that hit my eyes, that caused the accident.
Prosecutors dispute his story, saying he was speeding and negligent. They also say Joseph didn't have a valid driver's license, something he admitted on the witness stand.
Guidelines for fighting electric vehicle fires are not keeping up with the rising sales of EVs. A closer look at the fallout after this. The Biden administration is pushing to get more EVs on the road, and sales are going up. But along with the surge in electric cars are concerns about how first responders should handle fire emergencies on the road. As Spotlight on America's Chris Daniels found out, there are specific challenges with EVs and no universal guidelines for fighting those fires.
I would be dead. I could have been died that day.
Bishal Mala still deals with mental and physical scars.
My kids would have been orphaned. My wife would have been widowed. I would not be here right now. That's what it strikes my mind. Whenever I see that black mark on the side.
That black mark at the side of Highway 99 near Sacramento, California, is where his electric vehicle slowly started smoking.
All of a sudden, I hear some rattling noise from the bottom of the car.
And exploded. As firefighters attempted to knock down flames. The fight took hours because while EV fires are not more common than fires in gas-fueled cars, lithium-ion batteries in EVs pose new challenges. They burn slowly and can reignite even after the fires are out, often requiring extra surveillance and tons of water. Bishal lived to tell a tale now being repeated across the country with different EVs, leaving scars of their own, raising a daily question on whether there should be a uniform response for fire departments. Down the road in Orange County, in Michigan, or outside Seattle. With so many new models, each with different layouts, there is not a standard for fire departments on how to attack.
It's kind of something we call an innovation blind spot.
In Seattle, the fire department quickly looks through an emergency response guide by make and model to figure out a best angle of attack. But they're admittedly ahead of the curve. Every car maker has their own schematics, their own guidance. Ron Moore is a former fire chief who's made it his mission to train responders on EV fires. Spotlight on America was invited to a training in North Carolina, where they cut open a Tesla in order to give firefighters an inside look at the unique design.
Vendors have come up with everything from $800 tools designed to extinguish the fire up to $40,000 extinguishing tools. And every vendor promotes their tool as the best. Right now, there is no clear winner.
The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, or NHTSA, in a statement to Spotlight on America, said it is working on a rule-making action to propose further safety improvements to EV battery management systems, including requiring vehicle manufacturers to provide additional information related to fire risks and mitigation to first and second responders. But that was scheduled for last summer. Is this anything that ever crossed your mind when you were buying
Hell no, absolutely not.
Based on what you went through, would you ever buy another electric vehicle?
Nope, I would not. Forget about buying, I would not even drive one. I could have died that day.
And there is still a roadside sign of sorts on that freeway on-ramp, warning of the potential problems around the bend. I'm Chris Daniels for Spotlight on America.
Coming up, how the 76ers owners are trying to stop New York fans from taking over the arena for tonight's game. That's right after this. Knicks fans have spooked 76ers ownership so much that it is purchasing tickets on its own to avoid a repeat of Game 4. Sixers owners plus former co-owner Michael Rubin have bought more than 2,000 tickets for tonight's game against the Knicks to try and prevent New York fans from taking over the arena. Knicks fans were a major presence at Sunday's game at Wells Fargo Center, which Sixers player Joel Embiid said was disappointing. Rubin said on X that the tickets would be given to first responders, healthcare professionals, and local organizations. That does it for this edition of the National Desk. We do invite you to join us again this evening for more coverage on America's top stories. Just check your local listings for that. I'm Amira David, and thank you so much for watching.